Today is International Women's Day, where almost everything has been reduced to discount coupons for shopping and restaurants. I think it's important that we really talk about things that matter. And highly controversial, but increasingly relevant topic, which is marital rape. So I don't know if our viewers know this, but India remains one of the 36 countries that has not criminalized marital rape. And recently, we've been witnessing a number of court rulings and around marital rape. Our speakers will talk more about that. But what has happened, it has started generating a lot of discussions. So on one hand, we have feminists and human rights activists who are talking about bodily autonomy, sexual agency, consent, and most importantly, also democratizing this very unequal institution called marriage by bringing in legal reforms. And of course, we also have a very loud and vociferous arguments by traditionalists, right-wing groups, men's rights groups, who kind of feel that consent is innate in marriage. We really don't need to bring this up for discussion or any kind of reform. So this debate then on marital rape was, of course, brought to life again by petitions filed from, I think, 2022. And there's something called the marital rape exemption. So in our rape laws, we exempt marital rape. And this has become a bone of contention, particularly since the recommendation of the Justice Verma Committee in 2013. And I'm sure a lot of people are aware of that. But what is important is that last 12 years, this exemption continues to be upheld. So whether that's Section 375 of the Indian Penal Code, whether it's the Section 63 of the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, and of course, recently the Supreme Court declared that, we don't need laws on marital rape because existing laws on sexual and domestic violence was sufficient to protect women within marriages. So also, I think, and our speakers would speak more on it, they will shed light more on it, they're experts in the field, but for me, it's very interesting also the language that is used by the government, opposing these petitions, where saying that, criminalizing marital rape would be excessively harsh, would impact conjugal relationships, it would destabilize marriage, bring in serious disturbances. So how do we now then confront the idea of how fragile the institution of marriage is, and bringing in women's equality or bringing in the idea of consent within marriage itself would now then lead to its destabilization. And with that, I kind of invite my speakers to talk more about it. And I would like to invite Zakia to speak about her experience of working with women in who's been facing this kind of a violence. What has your work been? What has your experience been? If you could speak a little about that.
So, hi Panchali, hi Soumya, and hi all the participants. So, rape is a horrific crime against women, and marital rape is even more horrific than an ordinary rape, I would say that. It is sad that we have to compare, the degrees of this crime and talk about this like this. But marital rape means, permanently living with your rapist and getting raped again and again and again. We need to keep in mind the fact that a lot of women in India and in South Asia are in marriages which are long dead. The women continue in marriages because of lack of alternatives, because of the fact of the society being so patriarchal and so male dominated. And, I've heard this from scores and scores of women who come to us, especially in the matter of separation or divorce. And amongst the top-notch reasons for wanting to leave a man, there will be 2-3 such reasons. One is, like violence, general violence, asking for dowry or not, running, not supporting financially, things like that. And then the next important reason is sexual violence. Because just imagine the plight of a woman. Not only are you living with a man you are not in love with, forget you're not being in love with, forget that, but the man doesn't love you, he doesn't provide for you, he is unkind to you, he is violent to you, he is cruel to you, but he is very mindful of his right for a sexual relationship because he is the husband. And not only do you have to put up with your rapist on a day-to-day basis, that bodily autonomy gets violated, you get dehumanized, but you also have to pretend for a good part of your life that all is well, that he is your quote unquote husband. And then you have to carry out all the social transactions as a husband and between a husband and a wife. And that can be worse than outright commodification of a woman. And the kind of mental agony and mental torture that the woman goes through, because day after day she has to subject herself to this kind of a violation and this kind of a tyranny. So this is a very, very pressing issue, because like you said in your opening remarks, when we talk about marriage, we take it for granted that the whole question of consent, and it is a kind of the way it is interpreted is that it is an infinite consent, whereas in reality, even between romantic couples, there can be times, there can be days when you don't feel like sexual encounter. But in a marriage, for a wife, quote unquote wife, there is hardly any scope to talk about that. And not just that, she cannot talk about this to anybody, to her own parents, to any of her family members, and she has to subject herself to this atrocity day in and day out. Talking particularly about Muslim women, although Muslim women, Muslim marriage is a social contract, and although in reality the nikahnaama is a very basic nikahnaama, that also that too, if at all there is a copy of the nikahnaama with the woman, in half of the cases the woman doesn't even have the copy of her own nikahnaama. So it's a social contract where both parties have very clearly defined rights and obligations and conditions, but in practical life it doesn't work like that. The man, I'm sorry to say the husband, is guided by the common sense that I am the husband and therefore my wife should be available to me sexually. And sometimes the women are so fed up. They just don't want to discuss anything any further. They don't want to discuss the question of alimony. They don't want to discuss, whether she is able to get back her own stuff from the husband. She just says, I just want to part with this man. So mujhe just divorce dilao. I can't stand this. I can't take this day in and day out. It is a complete dehumanization of a person. And I feel our society, of course, our institutions and those sitting in the government need to wake up to this. But before that, I feel our society needs to wake up to this fact that marriage is a relationship between two partners who are equals, and something so intimate as a sexual contact or a sexual relationship cannot be based on one person being the dominant partner and demanding it at will, even when the other person is in no mood or in no condition to comply. So I think this needs a larger kind of a debate in our society. The whole, we need to discuss issues such as consent, such as mutual respect, even if you're married between partners, because if you're married, it doesn't mean that you're enslaved, And even as you might be a happy couple, like I said, there can be days and moments, and I'm sure there are so many husbands who are very, very understanding. But that is more of an exception, not really the norm, as I've seen in the course of our work. Over to you, Panchali.
Thank you, Zakia. I think a very important point is the question of dehumanization of wives or women, and the idea that marriage is a consensual relationship, it's a contract. So both parties, there must be a mutual respect. So I would like to take this conversation a little further into understanding what the social aspects of this is, as much as what legal reforms are required, what are the kind of legal aspects to this. And for that, I would like to invite Soumya to kind of speak a little bit, both on the social aspect as well as the legality of marital rape. Over to you, Samya.
Thank you, Panchali, and big hello, and thank you to the organizers and to the participants who are here. I'm very, very happy and honored to be talking to very well qualified women who are renowned in their own areas of work. So let me just add on to what Zakia has already, outlined so beautifully. And I just came across, this short summary regarding a woman's life. And this was produced in the Hindu, and I just want to read this. It's a short para. It says at 42, Asha, and her name is changed, has spent 24 years of her life dreading the next assault. Sitting at a counseling center in a Mumbai suburb, she vividly recalls each episode of violence, of being slapped, beaten with a stick, sexually abused in private, and verbally abused in public, and so on. She says that she has clung to her married status because it ensures a roof over her head, a one room kitchen flat that is in her husband's lane. Having studied up to class 10, she has taken odd jobs, but she says she can't fend for herself. And she doesn't, her earnings are very poor. 9 years after she first lodged the domestic violence case against her husband, Asha landed in the emergency room of a public hospital with injuries on her private parts. And that was when the doctors noticed that there was a sexual assault that was on her. This is 9 years later. But at the police station, the assault was seen as a matter between the husband and wife, and no case was registered. So I just want to want to highlight this, because this is summary of Asha's life very well substantiates what Zakia has already said. Imagine 24 years of one's married life dreading the next assault. What does that feel like? Can we even imagine that? Right? And like what Zakia said, that, having to live with the rapist and having to conduct everyday social transactions of cooking, cleaning, housekeeping, entertaining guests while living with the rapist. And imagine doing that for 24 years. What does that really do to one? I also want to highlight here that, although we are talking about marital rape, we must acknowledge that marital rape, in a way, is a subset of intimate partner violence, right? And Zakia has also mentioned about intimate partner violence. So intimate partner violence is abuse, aggression, violence that occurs in an intimate romantic relationship, and it can be with former spouse, current spouse, or dating partners. And marital rape is a subsect of that, where there are forceful sexual acts by a partner without consent or free will. And the aspect about marital rape that is really, really important for us to remember is that it is often characterized by coercive or manipulative means. So there is coercion, there is intimidation. Oh, if you don't agree to have sexual intercourse with me, then I will do this, this, this. So there is a threat, there is an intimidation, there are manipulations, and so on. So I think that's an important aspect. And I think there are, global research has shown that there are 6 categories of women who are at particular risk of marital rape. One is women who are in physically violent intimate relationships. Second is pregnant women. Third is women who are ill or recovering from surgery. Fourth is women who are separated or divorced from their spouse. And the fifth and sixth categories are very, very interesting and relevant to us in India. Fifth category is rapists who marry victims in order to avoid prosecution. And this is a very interesting category because just a few days ago, there was a news report. I think it was Allahabad High Court. I may be mistaken. It was a High Court which provided 3 months for the accused to marry the for the accused rapist to marry the victim. And very often this kind of the Supreme Court has come down heavily against courts which try to do this, and yet we have had these kind of judgments. These can be in bail, these can be in in other procedural stages where the judge says, okay, why don't you marry the victim, because you will be giving life to the victim. But here is a situation which has already been violent, and that marriage, if we presume that that marriage is going to suddenly bring in romance and love and understanding in that intimate sexual relationship, that we are very wrong in thinking that. And the sixth category that I want to highlight is women married to domineering men who consider them to be their property, which, as far as India is concerned, probably it's about 90 or 95%, which is really to, reiterate what Zakia has said, that, some husbands are understanding, but a majority of them are not. And our own statistics of National Family Health Survey, that also shows that over 90% of married women have been subjected to sexual violence within marriage. And when we say sexual violence, it's all forms, not merely intercourse alone, and but a range of sexual violence. So I would just wrap up here for now, but maybe we can. Do you also want me to talk about the law now or later? Whatever. I mean, I would leave it to you.
We can come back to the
Yeah.
question of law. I think what you foregrounded was so important, that marriage then becomes an institution which is based on male entitlement more than a very democratic, consensual arrangement where there is mutual respect. And surely with this kind of male entitlement or entitlement from any one partner, it flies in the face of the idea of marriage as an institution that nurtures love and intimacy. But I would like to now nudge the conversation towards legal reforms, and maybe Zakia, if you could just tell us a little bit more, what do you think are the steps that need to be taken to eliminate marital rape? What kind of legal reform is required, whether in terms of jurisdiction or in terms of implementation? It would be great to have your comments on that.
So we need this recognition that rape or sexual violence, no matter where it happens, within marriage, outside of marriage, in a relationship, within a living relationship, anywhere else, is a crime, and it should be treated as such. So I think this first and foremost, it's important that we address our mindsets towards women and girls in society. And I mean, it's asking for too much. It appears like it's asking for too much, but women and girls are much more than just their reproductive organs, and they have much greater role in society than just being producers of children, because this is the mindset which is at the base of our cultural norms about marriage. And this applies to all communities, irrespective of which faith background, which ethnic background. Because first and foremost, we feel that a girl or a woman is a sexual object, and is there for fulfillment of sexual fantasies of the male, and the marriage is an arrangement to bind one male to one female. I mean, this kind of a very ridiculous kind of a thinking we have in our society, which is very problematic. And this whole kind of sanction which is enjoyed by the institution of marriage, which is drawn from our culture, our religious norms, and these norms are actually patriarchal, hegemonic ideas, which are giving validity to this kind of ownership of the husband or the partner over the body of the wife or over the body of the female partner. And there has to be a recognition of bodily autonomy of everybody, and that includes women and girls. And other thing I think very important is we need to look seriously at the question of sex education. We need to focus on this right at the level of the schools, and definitely high school and higher secondary school and college. This whole some kind of a very vicarious pleasure that we associate with everything sexual, that is leading to this kind of and also the popular culture where a boy will always be chasing or stalking the girl, and eventually the girl will give in. Our literature, our films, our songs are full of this. So this is a very, very violent culture, and this behavior is criminal behavior. So the legal reform definitely is very, very important. But even if by some magic wand, although I have no hope for legal reform as of now, but by some magic wand, even if we were to criminalize these kind of actions, the society will take a long time to accept this. Because this whole thinking about boys will be boys, and girls have to be submitting and coy and giving in to those male advances. This kind of absurd thinking, rather than that even that there's an equality of the sexes, even when it comes to relationship within marriage. So both the man as well as the woman, the boy as well as the girl, both can have desires, and both may or may not have desire on a particular day. So that recognition needs to come. And I'm so shocked by the stand of the center in the marital rape matter, which is in the Supreme Court, to say that this will sort of break down the institution of marriage and family and society, as though we need to preserve the institution of marriage at the cost of our daughters, at the cost of the women and the girls. What kind of thinking is this? This is deeply violative of the constitutional principles of gender justice and gender equality. And this is kind of granting immunity and allowing this criminal behavior to grow with impunity. So I think that needs to be corrected. But more importantly, I feel we need an openness in our society about sex and sexual desires. Just like we accept that a woman is entitled to education, she's entitled to work, she's entitled to have her own pleasure, her own pastimes. Similarly, that sex is sex between two individuals is a natural instinct, and that there is nothing there to be shoved under the carpet. And there can be a relationship with which is sexually very, very active, but there can be occasions where even if you are a wife or a live-in partner, you are able to say no on that day. So I think we need legal reform as well as social reform by way of change in mindsets and attitudes. And this whole, Soumya and Panchali both, I'm horrified with this, whole concept of Suhagrat, in some of the old Hindi films. I'm first I didn't understand, but the day I understood that concept, I'm so horrified. It's nothing but rape by another means. I mean, most women are married to a stranger with whom they've never even exchanged a line, with whom they've never even talked. Forget, being in an intimate kind of a situation, and all of a sudden there comes this. You're married, and there comes this Suhagrat, and I can't accept it. And how we have romanticized that whole notion of Suhagrat, it inflames me. It angers me whenever I think of that. That's an aside. I'm not supposed to sort of bring my emotions here, but yeah. So legal reform is very important. And lastly, Panchali, if I have a moment, the government is talking about uniform civil code. What use is any code, any common code or any civil code if we are not going to address this important crime called marital rape? How? What is the what is the official policy on gender justice and gender equality? I don't understand. It is meaningless and absurd to talk about like the kind of law which has been brought about in the state of Uttarakhand. There is no mention anywhere of marital rape. So I think if that demand comes from within our society, from within the various sections of society, it can be the students, it can be the academic community, it can be the lawyers, it can be ordinary women. Ordinary women are demanding, but then who listens to them? The problem is that because the ordinary women are the ones who are paying the price. They are the ones who are bearing the brunt of this kind of violation, day after day. And like we discussed, for a lifetime. So they are the ones who want an end to this. But where is the mechanism to hear those voices and address those concerns? So yeah, legal reform and social reform both are required in this matter, I feel.
Thanks, Akya. I have to disagree with you here that we need to bring our emotions into our conversations, because I strongly feel that it is our anger as women and as feminists that are really pushing these conversations. Otherwise, we would just all give up. And I think it's also a belief in a different kind of a world where there is love, there's intimacy, there is joy, and that is what we are all moving towards, which kind of leads us to question that the traditional institutions of marriage, which is based on a certain sexual exploitation, is not acceptable to us. And we want to see different ways of inhabiting the world, different ways of loving, different ways of living together. In that question, I think I get the point about social reform, about gender norms and sanctioned cultures of violence. But I think a little more conversation on legal reforms is probably we could ask Soumya to tell us a little bit more on legal reforms. What are probably some recent High Court rulings? Maybe you could highlight for us the High Court ruling. Over to you, Soumya. Could you just shed some more light on this?
Sure. I think before we start thinking about legal reforms, we also need to think about where is the legal origin of this marital rape exception that you mentioned about, Panchali, in your introductory remarks. So we have a section on rape in the Indian Penal Code as it was known earlier, and now in the BNS, right? Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita. So we have a section which is on rape. At the bottom of that section, it says that any rape with a married woman will not be considered as rape. So there is this exception. Now, where did this exception come from? Unless we understand the history, it will also be difficult for us to think about countering it and bringing about legal reform. So this has a very, very clear British colonial origin. And there was this religious doctrine called doctrine of one flesh, which basically meant that husband and wife become one flesh after marriage. And of course, in a patriarchal society, that one flesh would be the flesh of the husband. From that doctrine of one flesh, it moved on to a legal doctrine of coverture, where marriage was considered to be a social contract. And because women were subsumed within the identity of their husband after marriage, women did not exist as a legal identity after marriage. And there was this presumption wife was giving unequal and unconditional consent to sexual intercourse with her husband. And this was an implied consent given by the woman in exchange for her protection by her husband. And because women lost their identity within marriage, they had no bodily autonomy, and they had no legal rights after marriage. And I'm talking about Britain in, the 1700s, right? That's how it was, where women could not, even married women couldn't own property. The property became the husband's. Women could not, married women could not enter into commercial transactions, and so on. So that is where this doctrine of coverture, which is a legal doctrine, came from. And that is the origin of saying that marital rape is exempt from the provision of rape, because when Indian Penal Code was codified in 1860, that is when this provision came. Of course, we have alternative legal remedies, and this is often used as an argument for saying, "Oh, let the marital rape exemption stay." But women can anyway go under Domestic Violence Act. Women can anyway go for a divorce or judicial separation, or women can even go under criminal law for cruelty and so on. But so long as this particular marital rape exemption stays in the penal law, it signals that a woman's consent to sexual intimacy is irrelevant within marriage, and it signals that husbands can have unlimited and unrestricted access to a wife's person. And that is very, very problematic when we have an Indian constitution which talks about equality, which talks about right to life and dignity, which are equally available to all women. So should married women not have the equal right to life and dignity? So that's a question that we really need to ask ourselves. And there are legal arguments which have been which have been advanced in courts of law, both in the Delhi High Court, which had this constitutional challenge, as well as in the Supreme Court. One is, of course, like what Panchali was highlighting earlier, threat to institution of marriage, that the marriage will be threatened. It will come under great stress, and removing marital rape exemption would destroy institution of marriage. But what is this institution that we are talking about? If one party within marriage is so traumatized physically, mentally, and then what is this institution of marriage that exists? It is a shell. There is nothing really substantial that exists inside it. Another argument which has been made by parliamentarians, as well as by legal arguments which have been advanced in courts, is that uh, deletion of marital rape is unsuitable to India, because we have poverty, illiteracy, and religious beliefs. So we have a complex socio-economic cultural context. And there is this, it is a Western notion. It does not happen in India. Of course, does not happen in India has been already countered by National Family Health Survey, which says that 95% of married women have been facing various forms of sexual violence. But this aspect of poverty, illiteracy, right? So if a person is poor, they have license to rape their wife. Person is lit, they have a license to rape their wife. So that's another aspect which we really need to think about. Third argument is about social contract and implied consent. And this is where Justice Verma Committee's observations are very, very important, where Justice Verma Committee report says that rape cannot, how does rape not become rape only because it is by the husband? Rape would still remain rape. I mean, it is not lesser, it is not any other action, right? So this aspect of bodily autonomy, and if we link it to constitutional right to life and dignity, that's again something that we need to think about. And the fourth legal argument, not only legal but also social, is that if marital rape exception is deleted, then women will lie, women will be vengeful, and women will misuse the law, and they will seek revenge against husbands, and all poor husbands, who are innocent, will actually be going to jail. And if we actually look at US experience, which has criminalized marital rape, we see that still very few women are going to the police and reporting about this. So as far as the law reform process is concerned, we had Justice Verma Committee recommendations in 2013, which said that rapist remains a rapist regardless of his relationship with victim, and it recommended deletion of marital rape exemption, but that was not accepted by the Parliamentary Standing Committee. Then in 2022, we had the Writ Foundation versus Union of India, which was a Delhi High Court judgment, and we had two judges. We had one judge, which was Justice Rajiv Shakdev, who declared marital rape exemption to be unconstitutional. And we had another judge, Justice Hari Shankar, who said that it is not up to the court to decide this. It should be the legislature which should decide on this, because we have to consider legal, social, cultural aspect. And then in 2022, there was a petition filed in the Supreme Court in Hrishikesh Sahu versus Union of India, and that case is still pending, and that is where Government of India has filed its reply opposing removal of marital rape exemption, and it has asked the court to respect legislative wisdom. What is this legislative wisdom is something for all of us to think about. And meanwhile, there have been contradictory High Court judgments. Gujarat High Court has said that something, Karnataka High Court has said something, Uttarakhand High Court has said something. We have a recent judgment of the Chhattisgarh High Court, which I've written about in The Wire recently. And that says that husband cannot be held guilty of marital rape, even in a situation where he had actually inserted his hand into his wife's anus, and that led to bleeding, and that led to her death. He was acquitted of culpable homicide, he was acquitted of rape, he was acquitted of all provisions. So that sends out a message that no matter what you do, a husband can do what he wants with his wife, and that would still not be considered rape, and he would actually be acquitted of all crimes even if she dies. So that is the latest judgment that we have before us, which really must ring the alarm bells for those of us who are who have concern about this issue. Over to you, Panchali.
Thank you, Samya. Thank you for taking us through all the court rulings and highlighting the recent kind of rulings by different courts, and also very interestingly, as you say, legislative wisdom. I mean, what is the government saying? So I also get a sense that there's a lot of popular demand to kind of look at this matter and kind of drop the exemption. But there's also very strong strong resistance against it from the government itself, from the parliamentary committees, etc. I think if it's okay with both of you, we could probably take a few questions from our audience. I would request our viewers to kind of type it in the comment box, and if you have a specific question that you would like to ask any of our specific speakers, please mention the name. It'll be easier for us to figure out who wants to know what from and from whom. So yeah, I'm just going to go to the comment box and see what we have there. Okay, there's a lot of there's a question on child marriage being prohibited by law, yet it has been happening in South Asia, including India. Is the marital cohabitation of child young couple amount to marital rape? Anyone wants to talk about the connection, child marriage and thing? And I'll just quickly go through the other Q&A questions. Samia, Zaki, anyone wants to
I could attempt that. I'm just reading. Yeah. I'll attempt to address that question. I'm just reading the question for myself once more. Marital cohabitation of child or young couple amount to marital rape? Yes, because the marital rape exemption earlier was for for up to 15 years. From 15 years of the wife onwards, it would not be considered to be rape, even if the wife was 15 years old. But then we had the independent thought judgment of the Supreme Court, which came some years ago, and that particular judgment told us that there was a conflict between two laws. Actually, we have POCSO, which is Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act, which says that all sexual acts which are done on children below the age of 18 would be considered to be non-consensual. And then we had this marital rape exemption, which was for 15 years and above. So what happens to girls in the age of 15 to 18 who are married? Will they not get protection under the Sexual Offences Act? So this was a question before the independent thought, in the independent thought judgment in the Supreme Court, and Supreme Court said we cannot have this. So it was increased to 18. That means any child marriage, if the girl is below 18, the presumption is that there was no consent, and that and the partner would be liable to prosecution. So that's what the law presently tells us. Of course, there is a Child Marriage Prohibition Act, and that does not penalize the girl herself, but it does penalize the parents and others who have conducted that child marriage. I hope that kind of answers the question. Okay.
We could take a couple of more questions.
There's other question.
I think if Soumya can talk about the age of consent and how sex between two minors and how the boys get criminalized, and the need to revisit the age of consent, because this question of child marriage has come. So
Correct.
Supposing the marriage is between two minors, or not just the marriage, but a relationship, sexual relationship between the two minors. So Soumya, if you can throw some light on that.
Correct. Yeah. So when it is sexual, intercourse or a consensual sexual relationship between two minors, unfortunately, the law is still going to criminalize it as far as the man is concerned, right? Because and the difficulty there is, between the age age of 15 or 16 to 18, research actually shows us that adolescents are in a sexually exploratory phase, and many of them do enter into sexual explorations which are consensual. And there is actually in other countries, there is something called a Romeo Juliet clause, which says that if the age difference between the two is not much, is within 1 year or 2 years, then that should be a consideration to consider it to be a consensual sexual relationship, and not to consider it to be rape. But the problem in Indian law is that from the age of 0 to the age of 18, children are considered to be one homogeneous category. But ground reality is different, right? From the age of 15, 16 to 18, adolescents do have sexual experiences. Many of it is voluntary, but the law will still penalize. So that then really becomes a problem. And here I really, one of the things that the Romeo Juliet clause takes us back to is power differentials, right? When we talk about marital rape, and one of the questions asked in the chat box is also, is marital rape one-sided, or is it only by one gender? Marital rape can happen on by either spouse on the other spouse, but we have to keep in mind the power differentials within that relationship, within that marital relationship. And I think in the Indian context, we all know where that power differential lies, and that is the context that we have to keep in mind. Thank you.
Thanks, Soumya. There are a number. I'm just trying to group them together. I think one of the issues that come up is a question of false cases, and maybe if someone could respond to that. So Gayatri Sharma asked, and some other do, and I'm just highlighting her question. A common we hear against criminalization, false cases, like how we prove it was conceptual or forceful. What about false cases? I think this is something that really drives a lot of paranoia, and maybe if one of you could just address the the whole accusation of false cases.
Yeah. So I mean, this is again, I'm not saying anything to this person who is commenting, but I'm saying generally as a society, we have created this whole bogey of false cases to prevent women and girls from getting justice. So let's take the dowry cases example. We know that despite of the dowry law, at least 50% or more perhaps of the marriages happen with an exchange of dowry, and out of that dowry occurrence, hardly 4% of the cases go to court. And of those 4% cases which make it to court, only less than 1.5% cases are tried where the dowry seekers are punished. So if we look at the statistics pertaining to women affirmative laws in our country, false cases appears to me to be just a bogey, or and a trick of patriarchal mindsets to deny further legislative protections to women and to girls. So the violator, the perpetrator is continuously violating and perpetrating crime day after day. But it's when the possibility of women getting justice, when that possibility arises, that everybody starts displaying great concern about what will happen if the man is falsely implicated. So let's not forget that for every one or two false case that might come up, there are thousands or lakhs and lakhs of cases which are going utterly unreported. And this is not a question of my perception or your perception. This is the NFHS and the government data, which tells us that the whole incidence of, like Soumya highlighted, the incidence of marital rape is widespread. It is reported in more than 82% cases of marriage between. It is reported by the wife. So where is the scope for false complaints? So this according to me, this is a bogey. I'm sorry to say that. Yeah. To you, Panchali.
Yes, thank you. I often wonder why nobody raises these questions when it comes to attempted
Panchali, can
murder.
I just add?
Please, by all means.
Panchali, can I just add to what Zamya has said? Yeah,
Yes,
I just
yes.
want to read from this Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, which is our latest. We have a section 227, which is about giving false evidence. We have a section 228, which is about fabricating false evidence. We have 229, which gives punishment for false evidence. And then we have a range of sections 232, 231, 233, which is about threatening a person to give false evidence or giving fabricated or false evidence to procure conviction, using evidence known to be false, and so on. In addition to all these sections which exist in our criminal law, we also have a section on perjury, which means if you give wrong testimony in a court of law, you can be criminally prosecuted for that as well. We have all these criminal law sections in place. So I don't think we should really worry too much about false case and fabricated case, because then we have enough legal provisions to address that concept, right? That possibility. But really what we need to see is what is the context in which this allegation of false complaint comes. Every time it is about domestic violence against a woman, it's about rape or other forms of sexual violence against women, or it is atrocities against dalits or against adivasis, or when it is sexual violence against children. These are the contexts in which we are told, oh, there can be false complaint, oh, the men need to be protected. And let us see that all of these are socially marginalized groups, and the Indian constitution actually provides a mandate to the government to protect and to enact special legislation to protect the rights of such socially marginalized groups. So I think this question of false complaint also needs to be seen in this larger context of who is raising this issue and why are they feeling so threatened. What is it about law that they are feeling so threatened and insecure about? I think those are the kind of questions that we should also be thinking about. Thank you.
We're almost towards the end of our webinar, but there was one question. If both of you could just give one conclusive response to that is, Pranab Nair asks, only 32 countries in the world have not criminalized marital rape. So why is it difficult for a progressive country like India to criminalize it? We're almost to the end, so both Soumya and Zakya, one response each. Why is it so difficult for India to do so?
Yeah, because of the way we are, because we remain, 75 years after independence and after the constitution, we remain a male dominated patriarchal society. And our laws are also coming from a state, and state in its thinking, fundamentally in its thinking, it's patriarchal. So, and we are a progressive country, but depends on what are we talking about. Are we talking about the people? Are we talking about the institutions? Are we talking about the officials? Are we talking about those sitting in the administration? So it varies and varies. So yes, marital rape is a crime and should be treated as such, even if the purpose is to save the institution of marriage. Equal partnership, a partnership based on mutual trust and mutual respect, has more chances of going a long way, has more greater chances for building a healthy family together. So even if one were to take that kind of lesson from that kind of thinking also, marital rape needs to be criminalized and treated as a crime. To you, Panchali.
Soumya, one last word from you on why is it so difficult in our country?
Yeah. Yeah, I really keep wondering whether we can even call our country to be progressive if married women do not have the same kind of bodily autonomy or dignity to life that other women have. Not that other women are having a whole lot either, but I really want to question that. And I think, as far as the law is concerned, one is this pushback by men's rights groups, which I would consider to be a lot of propaganda. Right, it's a lot of propaganda, and it is really fear mongering, saying that, oh, every wife is going to run to the police station with a complaint against her husband. Every man has to be, trembling within his marital home. This is the kind of fear mongering that's happening, and we really need to address that squarely. As far as the courts, the lawmakers are concerned, I think it's very difficult for them to criminalize marital rape, and to even just remove that marital rape exception from criminal law, because they are putting themselves in the shoes of the husband. Many of them are husbands themselves, and they probably one of the fears that they have, anxieties that they have in their mind is, oh, if marital rape is criminalized, then I also could be held responsible. Right. So I think there is an anxiety that comes from that perspective as well. But I think, for us as Indian citizens, if we really are a truly progressive country, then our fundamental rights have to be at the center of this debate on marital rape. And then right to life with dignity, right to equality, right against discrimination should apply to all women, including married women. And if we keep that at the center of it, then the marital rape exemption really needs to go from the law. And as a society, we also need to be able to acknowledge marital rape as a heinous offense. Thank you.
Thank you, Soumya. Thank you, Zakia. With this, we are going to end our webinar.
Thank you.
And I really want to thank the Frontline Conversations for bringing up this topic, because a long-standing demand of the women's movement was both bread and roses. I think on Women's Day, we really need to, as much as we talk about economic empowerment, I think we also need to talk about the right to pleasure, the right to intimacy, which is not informed by violence, but one that is of joy, and how we can inhabit the world in ways that does not necessarily have to be within patriarchal institutions. How can we reform them? How can we democratize them? I think these are long-standing demands of the women's movements, of human rights activists, and as ordinary women, I think that is the least that we can demand for, that we live life with dignity and with freedom. So thank you, both of you, for bringing in, of course, the aspects of legal reform, but also the question of the humanity of women, how we are not to be dehumanized, how we are not to be treated as objects of our husband. When you were talking about Suhagrat, I was thinking of Kanyadan. It's the whole idea of marriage is the gift of virgin from father to the husband. So how can we really rethink these institutions? And there were some comments which were talking, saying that, do we even need marriage? I mean, that is another debate. But let's at least begin by reforming the institutions that we have in hand. And maybe someday we don't need marriage any further. I mean, we can do away with that. But anyway, that's just my little two-bit. Thank you so much. Thank you to our viewers for joining us on a Saturday morning, discussing marital rape on International Women's Day. That's it from my end. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.